In November, 9 months after toppling Hosni Mubarak, Egypt's pro-democracy protesters again descended on Cairo's Tahrir Square. With parliamentary elections about to begin, they were demanding an end to military rule and for civilian leaders to run the country until a new president is chosen. Activists from the April the 6th movement were at the heart of the springtime battle to bring down the president. Now, they too were back on the streets, calling for the army to go. This is the story of their first days back in Tahrir Square and the resumption of a struggle that even this week has brought shocking images of a woman being brutally beaten and fears that a revolution is under threat.
The roller coaster of revolution. 1 minute peaceful, the next violent. And so it is in Egypt. With the election only a week away, the democratic transition has turned ugly. Democracy activists are back on Tahrir Square because the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, or SCAF as it's known, have announced they'll retain key powers and remain unaccountable to any civilian authority, regardless of elections.
نعتبر دوت المرحلة الثانية للثورة المصرية. وكنا قلناها قبل كده أكثر من مرة، قلنا بنفس الأسلوب اللي بيسير بيه المجلس العسكري، بنفس الاتهامات اللي بيروجها، بنفس المعالجة القضايا، فاحنا في طريقنا للمرحلة الثانية من الثورة المصرية، ولا تكون وبيظهروا في التلفزيون مرة ثانية ولكنهم كانوا قبل كده في النظام القديم.
الالتزام بإجراء الانتخابات البرلمانية في توقيتاتها المحددة.
The head of SCAF, Field Marshal Mohammed Hussein Tantawi, appears on television, offering no apology for the recent violence, despite 30 deaths. He says nothing about curbing military control in politics and will not postpone upcoming elections. The details of Tantawi's speech are transmitted around the square with lightning speed via phone and Twitter. They fear the military may never relinquish control, not unless pushed. The response from the protesters is immediate.
It was a big mistake when we left Tahrir Square in 11th of February. And we understand it. We got the lesson at this time. We will never leave Tahrir Square again till we complete our demands, till we achieve our revolution. We feel that the same mentality of Mubarak is there, Tantawi and the SCAF.
This was the secret headquarters of the April 6 youth movement last January, buzzing with excitement about the events in the streets below. The movement's leader, Ahmed Maher, was among the first to call the people of Cairo onto the streets on January 25th to protest the brutality of the police, a protest that eventually grew into a revolution. What seemed a spontaneous uprising was actually being coordinated by activists around the country. Ahmed Maher, 31, married with 2 children. He's an engineer by training and the founder of the April 6 movement. Walid Rashid is a political science student and founding member of April 6. Mossab Shahrour, 20 years old, student and kitchen fitter. Amra Ali, 28, an accountant and campaigns coordinator for April 6th. The revolutionaries watched the events they helped put in motion. The critical force then, as now, was the army, and whether it was with the people or against them. Even when Hosni Mubarak fell last February, the answer to that question was not clear. SCAF took control and declared its role transitional. But there was no guarantee it would ever step down, as April 6 acknowledged at the time.
ولكن الضمانة الوحيدة المطالب دي تتحقق بالفعل إن الناس تفضل في الشارع والناس تستمر في المطالبة بهذه الإصلاحات أو المطالب.
In the months that followed, April 6 activists worked hard to politicize Egyptians, most of whom have never experienced true democracy.
شباب نازل التحرير ولا ايه؟ نوعيها للشارع بتاعنا وللعمارة بتاعتنا والأهالينا سواء بره سواء جوه إن الانتخابات اللي جاية دي هي الفاتورة اللي دفعت الشهداء دفعوها علشان ناخد حريتنا.
Shahinaz Mashal, housewife and mother, revolutionary. This is April 6 headquarters today, Tahrir Square branch, a ragtag assembly of plastic sheeting and tents. Various activist groups, including April 6, have coordinated their efforts and announced that today will be a million-man march. There are rumors that the clashes and chaos around the elections may prevent them from happening. For the protesters, that would be a good outcome. SCAF promised to step out of politics 6 months ago. That was 9 months ago. But not all of Egypt's problems are being settled in Tahrir these days. Elsewhere in Cairo, groups such as the Muslim Brotherhood, who have big hopes for the election, are keen for them to go ahead. Nevertheless, back in the place where it all started, the battle lines have been drawn. In the corner of the square, where they've established their base, April 6 activists are dug in and preparing for a long stay. Inside their main tent, donated food is packaged up and ready for distribution to those now living on the square. Activists help each other to write their names on their arms in case they're injured or incapacitated by tear gas.
الشباب جوا الله يبارك لهم يعني الحمد لله رب العالمين. الشباب بتاع الألقرص جوا أسود. الأسود يفروا. دول ما بسم الله ما شاء الله ما الحمد لله رب العالمين.
The activists were fired up by video highlighting the heartlessness of the security forces.
بعد ما كان عددنا قليل وقدرنا ان احنا نخلي قوات الامن تتراجع لشارع محمد محمود بعد ما كانوا موجودين في ميدان التحرير.
Mossab is heading to the front line to take his turn.
هنا مكان التجمع بتاع 6 ابريل تمام في الخيم دي كلها تمام وبعد كده احنا هندخل شارع محمد محمود الشارع بتاع الحرب وكده تمام.
As the self-appointed official photographer of the movement, Mossab considers his camera his weapon. Activists say they're defending the square from the military police, who are trying to break through to clear protesters. The injured are taken away on motorbikes. The protesters show us out-of-date tear gas canisters. That's the reason it's so toxic, they say.
الغازات المثيرة للدموع متعبة للغاية. دخلنا جوه وزي ما شفت معانا الوضع صعب، الشباب ثابتين مكانهم مش عاوزين يتحركوا. بيقاوموا بقى لهم أكثر من 4 أيام قدام الداخلية.
An army of volunteers is ready at the edge of the square. They pour a homemade antidote into the eyes of the fighters. There are ambulances ready for the more serious casualties. The casualties continue to mount. Perhaps 1,000 have been injured, most by rubber bullets and the suffocating effects of the tear gas. There are now a dozen makeshift clinics on the square. Meanwhile, across town, inside the official headquarters of April 6th, activists are just waking up after a few hours' sleep.
المنظر اللي احنا فيه والخلق البايظه دي. طب هيطلع فين على سبيس تون ولا؟
They've been up most of the night organizing for today's demonstration. Communication with the public is all important.
المنشورات ده عمل دوري بنعمله كل يوم بالمستجدات اللي بتحصل في الميدان والآراء اللي بنحصرها من الاستطلاعات الرأي اللي بنعملها
Today's pamphlets are a response to Tantawi's television address last night.
توزع الورق ده يا باشا. بص هنروح محمد خليك انت في ظهري خليك انت في ظهري.
The flyers are distributed across the square. They're asking for a postponement of the elections until the military have transferred power to a civilian authority. In addition to pamphleting the protesters, April 6 has other priorities. Among them, security of the square, especially given the violent struggle continuing on Mohammed Mahmoud Street.
We are in the main entrance of Tahrir Square. It's from Qasr Nil Street. And there is many people, they are like security, they are checking the IDs and passports for people they would love to be part of Tahrir Square. They are also checking the bags of the people for protesters, just only for security issues.
And security is necessary. There are thieves and thugs in their midst. April 6, in orange vests, apprehend them. A truce with the security forces was negotiated in the afternoon, but all hell breaks loose again by evening. Young men are again pitched against the well-armed state security forces. This kind of street politics worked very successfully 9 months ago. But can it be successful now?
إذا كان شفت البيان 85 وقيعة وش يعني يقول لك المواطنين الشرفاء ينزلوا مش عارف ايه ما يحصلش وقيعة بين الشعب والثوار يعني المواطنين الشرفاء حاجة والثوار حاجة وميدان التحرير بالنسبة له حاجة تانية.
فصلوا الصفة
يعني ده الميدان اللي جه
بيقطعوا الشعب دلوقتي على فكرة فصايل وقطايع ودي مشكلة.
Revolutionists, as the army calls them, are brought into the makeshift April 6 clinic on the square. There's a palpable sense of frustration here with the Muslim Brotherhood for abandoning them to fight a battle from which they benefit most.
بس انا لي علاقات مع الاخوان جدي يبقى محمد حبيبي اللي هو كان نائب محمد مهدي عاكف فتره كده بعت لنا رسائل بيقول لك ربنا معاكم. طب انا اعمل ايه بربنا معاكم دي؟ ماشي اوكي اعمل ايه بربنا معاكم دي؟ اعملها ايه ربنا معاكم دي؟
طبعا اللي ما جاش الميدان
هو الخسران
هو الخسران
انا قلت له
ايا كان الفصيل
على فكره يا طنط
اي فصيل
الناس الاول كانت بتخاف من السلفيين دلوقتي الناس بتحب السلفيين وبتكره الاخوان.
Meanwhile, the leaders of April 6 are all here to decide on their response to Tantawi. And despite the absence of the Muslim Brotherhood, April 6 and their political allies are planning the biggest protest so far on Friday. Waleed announces to activists that they will march from mosques across the city after midday prayers, as they did during the January Revolution.
زي ما حصل يوم 28 إن لازم الناس من بره الميدان يعيشوا معانا إن إحنا هنا في الميدان مش مفصولين عنهم فإحنا دلوقتي هنتفق على اجتماع هنعمل اجتماع مع رؤساء المجموعات اللي موجودين ونتفق على إن التحرك هيبقى من فين ومن فين وأكيد هنقول لكل الناس من النهارده بالليل يبقى عندنا بكره الخميس كله نقدر نجهز نفسنا والجمعة إن شاء الله كلنا نصلي.
April 6 has not changed its position on the elections. They want them postponed until power is transferred to a civilian authority. And in this chaotic atmosphere, can SCAF really go ahead with them?
I don't think so, because no government will take these responsibilities right now. No police will take this responsibility right now. And I believe if SCAF will do it next Monday, so it means they are creating new problems and new issues. I'm not against the election, but I want election to be in real atmosphere, freedom atmosphere.
الله أكبر.
"4 a.m. on Tahrir Square. Many have woken early or not gone to sleep at all. Hundreds are catching whatever little sleep they can. Today promises to be one of the biggest protests on Tahrir Square since the fall of President Mubarak. As midday prayers approach, Mossab organizes security for a special guest who's made it known he wants to join the people in prayer at the square today. Mossab and his security guards run into the square and disappear into the crowd to form a protective circle around the special guest. Dr. Mohammed El Baradai, is one of the political leaders April 6 want to take over the transition to democracy from the military. While El Baradei prays with the protesters on the square, on the other side of town, Walid is praying at the Mustafa Mahmoud Mosque. When midday prayers are over, he will call people to march towards Tahrir Square. This is exactly what he did last January. Everything has changed, but not changed.
The news is that SCAF is recommended one of the leaders of the party of Mubarak to be as the new president of government. His name is Kamal Ganzouri. Kamal Ganzouri was president of the government during Mubarak regime. So of course that we are not changing Mubarak to put his president or his ex-government president to be in his replacement. We are totally against it, and I think the message and the voice will be very, very clear today from Tahrir Square.
Protesters consider the appointment of a former Mubarak ally as an incitement. Calls for the march have been successful, and thousands of protesters are already filling the square. But the reality is that this liberal crowd represents only one part of society. For many Egyptians, achieving the right to hold free and fair elections is success enough. Walid may be away from the square and other leaders of the movement, but he keeps abreast of political developments.
I have here 2 full charge batteries with me, so in case anyone is low battery, so I can change it to use it also. So I think in this time, technology and social network are playing a very, very important. We are creating our media by ourselves right now. We are not waiting the media of national TV because they are always lying.
When the marchers finally reach the square, everyone is talking about the same thing.
احنا ما نعرفش نساوم على موضوع الجنزوري وناخد مكاسب.
هم ما يدوش، هم عايزين حد يركبوه، حد يبقى شو.
Despite today's success in terms of numbers, SCAF is not swayed from their position on the elections. They will begin on Monday as planned. The people have the power to protest in the new Egypt, but in this case, it is not enough. The next day, April 6 holds a press conference at their official headquarters. They review what's been a violent and critical week in this new phase of revolution.
هناك إصرار المجلس العسكري على خلق أزمات طول الوقت، إما من منطلق الغباء السياسي، يكونوا ما عندوش خبرة في الإدارة السياسية، أو الأزمات المفتعلة، وهي ما ينطبق على الأزمة الحالية. فالأزمة الحالية هناك شك كبير جدا، بل يقرب إلى التأكد أن هذه الأزمة أزمة مفتعلة. ولكن الشباب مصر إن هو يكمل ثورته بنجاح رغم تعنت المجلس العسكري، والناس بقالها 4 أيام بتتكلم حوالين فكرة إن في تسليم سلطة المدنيين بالشكل المتاح، إما إن هو يكون مجلس رئاسي مدني أو حكومة إنقاذ وطني.
Polls open Monday morning, despite the protesters' best efforts to postpone them. Turnout is strong. Everyone knows this is an historic moment, one many people want to record as a trophy, to reward their determination and spirit. Among the first to vote is Shahinaz. Other April 6 activists also cast their ballots. They want to support democracy in action, even if they disagree with the army's insistence on holding it now. The movement's leader, Ahmed Maher, makes it to the polls at the end of the first day. Balloting will continue for weeks and in different parts of the country at different times. Shahinaz is among the April 6 members to volunteer as an election monitor.
ده تبع لحزب ايه ده لو سمحت؟
احنا عاملين خدمه لكل الناس.
خدمه عامه ايوه، بس تبع مين يعني؟
تبع نفسينا وخلاص.
لا ازاي بقى؟ مش تبع نفسيك ولا حاجه.
حقيقي والله.
والله
انا ما قلتش، انا قلت لحد يا جماعه.
لا ما قلتش، لا انا ما قلتش انك قلت.
انا تبع حزب المحافظين بس انا ما قلتش لحد.
اوكي شكرا.
Her job is to ensure the vote is free and fair, to make sure voters understand how to place their vote on the complicated ballot paper, and to make sure they vote without being pressured by desperate candidates.
شوفي ظهر من ظهر، لقيتي ختمين، لو لقيتي ختم واحد يبقى لازم القاضي اللي جوه وانت بتطالبي ده حقك.
اهم حاجه بس عشان الصوت بتاعك ما يسقطش لازم تنتخب بالجرس رقم 10.
لا من فضلك.
Some candidates have not got the hang of things yet.
للمرة الثانية بقول لحضرتك الدعاية خلصت أول امبارح. أنا؟ اتفضل. صباح النور يا فندم. أيوه.
طب حضرتك صباح الفل.
صباح الخير.
أقول لحضرتك على حاجة.
اتفضل.
هو الهدف في الآخر إن إحنا نصل للعدالة.
تمام.
صح يا فندم؟
تمام.
نصل للعدالة.
تمام.
وأحيانا القانون يبقى متجمد لدرجة لو طبق بحذافيره وفيهوش مرونة ولا حضرتك يتعب دي حاجة. بقول يا جماعة لو ابني نادي الانتخابات لو لقيت واحد تاني عنده أمانة ومقدرة أكتر منه لا ما تنتخبوش ابني.
تمام.
هي دي الرسالة اللي أنا عايز أوصلها لحضرتك.
حضرتك الرسالة كنت تقدر توصلها بس مش النهارده.
Another Friday, another protest. The elections haven't changed anything for April 6th. They're continuing their fight to ensure Egypt's future is not ruled by the military.
غير التحرير ما كانش فيه ضغط على المجلس، كان المجلس هينفذ كل حاجه هو عايزها. التحرير هو اللي عمل الثوره، التحرير هو اللي جاب التغييرات دلوقتي، التحرير هو اللي ادى الانتخابات رغم كل السلبيات اللي فيها لكن افضل بكتير من اي انتخابات قبل كده. فطبعا دي معارك والتحرير دوره موجود لسه هيستمر دوره الفتره الجايه كمان.
بتلينا وبرضه حاولوا يسكتونا كانوا فاكريننا لسه هناخد على قفانا ونكتب فينا وننسى لما نلاقوا ان مفيش فايده لقوا اساليبهم الوسخه.
بنسمع النتيجه
عشان نعرف نشوف مين الناجح منهم.
The preliminary results are coming in. Masab, who is determined to camp out until the revolution is over, is eager for news. After the first round of voting, the Muslim Brotherhood has secured 36% of the vote. They will be the power brokers of the transition to democracy and the new constitution. Combined with the more conservative Salafists, they have more than double the vote of the so-called liberal forces. For Masab, a liberal secularist, the moment is bittersweet. But the roller coaster continues. Masab and other activists shift their camp to outside the cabinet offices to make clear their protest against the Ganzouri appointment. On Friday, minutes after the Prime Minister promises no force will be used, the military moves in to clear the area. By Saturday morning, 8 protesters have been killed and nearly 300 injured. Masab is one of them.
الساعة 4 ابتدى في جنود جيش يطلعوا في أعلى المبنى الإداري الملحق بمجلس الشعب وبيحدفوا كميات طوب وإزاز وكراسي. كان أي شيء موجود عندهم كانوا بيحدفوه على المعتصمين. بعد كده ابتدى قوات الجيش تخرج بأعداد كبيرة. اتجمع حوالي 10 جنود تقريبا واخدوا الكاميرا واخدوا الحاجات وابتدوا يعترضوا عليا. الجنود كانوا بيستخدموا الخشب وحديد في الضرب، فضربوا على بعد ما وقعوني في الارض ضرب في الرجل وضرب في الدراع وضرب في الراس.
Prime Minister Al Ganzouri claims that these protesters are not from the revolutionary youth of last January. But Masab has been on the streets from the start, demanding one thing: an end to military rule. Masab Sharour, student, kitchen fitter and revolutionary, vows to keep fighting for what he believes in, however difficult and dangerous.